Alright guys, we're back today to discuss, to continue a discussion on feminism and why it's a pervasive kind of bad thing, really evil thing going on in our society today. All the misconceptions about the 77-cent money that women make compared to men. Every time that is brought up, it's been shown many cases, many times, that it's false. It's never been true. The fact is that most women in college tend to go into fields that are more easier for them to take off for family reasons, to have children, and to come back. You know, they don't go into a lot of most women in general go into fields that would allow them to take off so that they can have children, raise children, and then come back at a later date after the children are able to be put in daycare around 5 or 6. If you say if you wanted to be a computer designer, you wanted to design computers and things like this, if you wanted to do that and you took 5 years off, when you came back, the entire industry would change. You couldn't do that. You'd be down at the bottom of the totem pole. You'd have to probably go back to college to learn all the new stuff that came out. So there's a lot of fields that they can't go into, and the fact is that most of them go into fields that don't really net as much money and are less dangerous. The fact is that most jobs that are high paying are also very dangerous, and women tend not to want to go into those jobs. So the fact that these women think they talk about this pay gap, and the big thing about it is they say they earn 77 cents to the dollar, and that's where you need to focus on that word, earn. Most of the problem that we have when we look at this research is that the word earn is a big problem, because a lot of women don't want to devote so much time to their work. They don't want to work, say, 15-hour days. They want to have time to themselves. They don't want to work on Saturdays. They don't want to work 7 days a week. A lot of men will do that, not only because they have to, but because they don't really care. It's not a big deal, even if they do have family. They do that so that they can support for their family. Whereas a woman doesn't feel that way. She doesn't want to do that. So a lot of the jobs that men have, they'll spend on an average about 55 to 70 hours a week on, whereas most women will only spend about 35 to 40 hours a week on. And they don't think about work at home, most of them. Most of them don't do work off the clock at home. Many men do. It creates a very high stress environment for them, which is why many men have a problem with dying early. They're very stressed. Speaking of dying, we have studies that have came out now. I'll try to put everything in the description box below so you can check out everything. But the studies have came out now that say that 78% of men who commit suicide do so due to relationships. That they feel they have no other option, and they end up killing themselves. There's many other studies that came out. Canadian research, they looked at adolescent girls and boys, and they found in their aggression towards partners that 34% of women, of girls, little girls, admitted to hitting, biting, scratching their partners compared to 2.6% of the boys. 2.6% compared to 34%. Now women always want to talk about patriarchy, and this stuff like this is a systemic problem. When you're raised in a culture where you say that you should never hit a woman. We're raised in this culture to believe that women are better than men, And they have this idea in feminism that women are subjugated, they're below men. But how do you explain women and children first? You know, how do you explain all these things where women and children are at the top of the food chain? You know, it doesn't make any sense. How do you account for the fact that over 60% of the people who are graduating college now are women? You know, yet most of the jobs that they're applying for and that most of the fields that they're going into are like art majors, or you know, things that are basically, you know, English teacher, it's teacher positions and stuff, because in those jobs you can have a child and then you can come back to it and still have a job. You know, you can't do that if you're in a field that advances so far in just 1 year. If you take off a year or two to raise a child, when you come back, you won't have a job. You'll have to go back to college to learn a bunch of new stuff that only took 2 or 3 years to find out. So it's not a good thing. Also in that study, the Canadian research, they found that 18% of the girls used weapons when they fought the boys, while they hit with, you know, a stick or, you know, a ruler or something. They actually used a weapon on their boys, while 0% of the boys did. You know, boys are taught not to hit women, and especially not to hit them with a bat or a stick or a shoe or, you know, anything like that. But women aren't taught that at a very young age. Women are taught that you don't hit me, you know, and I can do whatever I want. I can kick you, I can scratch you, I can bite you, I can call you names, I can tell you that your penis is small, I can do whatever I want, you know. It even bears out in like The View, you know, where they had the man that had his penis cut off for cheating, you know, which apparently if you cheat on a woman, the penalty for that is having your penis chopped off and put into a garbage disposal, you know. And then that's laughed about. But if that was reversed and a man cut off a woman's vagina and put it into a garbage disposal, he'd be on probably death row, you know. They would never allow that. He would get life in prison, you know. But the woman will probably get out in like 5 years, you know. She probably won't even get that much prison time, you know. And it wouldn't be laughed at, you know. That person, they would think that person was so horrible. And it's because there's a double standard, you know. And feminists don't like to talk about logic, this kind of logic, because this is logical, you know. The other thing we got is the Australian Bureau of Statistics stated that 70% of victims experience abuse from the partner in the home. So basically what they're saying is 70% of men are abused at home by their wives and their girlfriends and you know, mother, father, you know, things like that. So most of it's coming from the family members, from the wife, mostly wife and girlfriend, you know. And the problem is many people have talked about this, but it seems like feminists don't want to talk about it. They always talk about equality, but the problem is there is no equality in sexes, because the women have always been up here and men have always been down here. Everything, all the laws, all the legislation, everything, affirmative action, the whole bit. If you go into any interview, and you may have a doctorate in something, you could go into an interview and apply for a job that you're overqualified for, and they'll pick somebody, the woman, that's underqualified because they want to meet a quota. So you don't get jobs because of your merits anymore, because women they have to appease that thing. They have to have a certain amount of women. You know, in Britain there was a law that just came out where they said if they didn't do that, that they would start implementing a certain law. So the people were worried about that, and they went from like 6% to like 55% in just 1 year in companies, because they were worried about this coming out. So think of how many women probably got promoted or hired to meet that quota that weren't qualified, you know, and maybe got it over men because they weren't qualified, you know, just to meet a quota, you know, and they'll say, oh, that's fine, you know, what's feminism is great, you know, because of that, you know. I don't, doesn't make any sense, but let's see. Yeah, and the 70% of males in Australia that experienced the violence in the home, you know, from wives hitting them, calling them names, women's rates were only 64%. So men's rate were 6% higher than the women's rate, yet we never hear anything about women, about the men of it, you know. And the other problem is, if you look, there's only, I don't know how many there is now, I haven't checked, but in 96 or something, there was only like 6 men's shelters in the United States, you know, that basically took care of battered men, you know, and you know, when we're talking about battered men, we're not only talking about, you know, like something that a lot of women don't like to talk about either is the rape culture they always want to talk about, which is complete bullshit. The vast majority of rapes that go on in the United States, real rapes, not ones that are made up, you know, the last 3 rapes that have been talked about by feminists and women to promote the rape culture have been bullshit, they've been fake. The real rape statistics state that a lot of the rapes, most of the rapes, over 180,000 a year, are from men. You know, when you look at prison, you know, how many? That's just like that's nobody even talks about trying to stop it or help it or anything. Everybody just knows, like, oh, you're going to go to prison, so you're going to get ass raped. You know, that's just a common thing, and nobody cares about that. Nobody talks about it. It's actually kind of a funny thing. You know, oh, you went to jail. Oh, you got a ticket and you went to jail for a month. I bet you got fucked in the ass. You know, it becomes kind of like something like that. And if you said that to a woman, oh, better not say nothing like that. You know, that's something you can do. You know, that's not funny. That's not a laughing matter. You know, but it's a laughing matter as long as it has to do with men. You know, and you know, the abuse towards men, verbal, emotional, sexual, and using children as negotiating tools, you know, these are things that are very underlying issues that women have a lot of tools they use in relationships, and any man will tell you that's been in a relationship for very long that you can't do anything anymore. You know, you don't have any life. You know, you're almost basically, you have like no sex. You know, it happened with my ex-wife. You know, with my ex-wife here in Japan, I ended up having sex about once every 4 to 6 months. In the divorce, my children called me Mapa because I did all of the diapers. I did everything. My wife was never home. She would eat dinner every night at her mom's place, where the kids would go after daycare, and she worked as a nurse, and she would end up working like double shifts, and she would go to work, she would sleep in a room for 8 hours, and then she would get up and go back to work in the morning and work another like 12 to 15 hour shift, and then she would come home. So when we got a divorce, they gave her the custody so that her mother, who was 80, could watch the children. You know, because the mother that's 80 is a better parent than me, the father. You know, and this is not just Japan. This is everywhere in the world. Basically, it's very, very rare for a man to be able to get custody of the children. You know, even in a relationship where the woman has cheated on the man or has abused him. You know, maybe he physically abused them. Most men can't get anyone to say, you know, like, oh, that's terrible, that's horrible, I can't believe you were abused. They just look at him and go, man, come on, you're a dude, man, how could she abuse you? You know, what, is she gonna slap you around? You should punch her, you know, and then you're on the bag if you do that, you know. So most guys just don't do that kind of thing, you know. So these are just some of the things I was going to talk about. You know, it's women always want to talk about these cultures of rape, cultures of things. Well, the thing that men have a problem with is we have learned helplessness, and this learned helplessness comes from not being able to stand up for yourself against a woman. You know, so much of the abuse comes from verbal abuse. You know, in an argument with a woman, the first thing she's going to bring up is the size of your penis. You know, you don't satisfy me in bed. You're not a man. You know, things like that. You know, these are common expressions that a woman will use that tear you down. You know, it's basically bullying, and they love to do this. And this is a common practice that women use to make you feel like shit. You know, and they love to do it, and they don't see a problem with it. You know, and feminists will tell you that there's no problem with that. It's fine. It's fine for them to be able to do that. And any man will tell you that it's not fine and that it's not cool. So this is I'm gonna keep talking about this and keep bringing up more points and stuff, but I'm just gonna chip away at it, because every time you make a video like this, you get responses, and feminists go nuts, and lots of men are sympathizers, you know, I guess you would say. So a lot of men will get on here and say the same kind of things and put lots of bad, you know, reviews or whatever. It doesn't matter, you know. But these are the kind of things that happen when you do these videos, because equality, to have equality, you have to have a discussion about what the problems are, and it's a one-sided discussion. Women are the victim, men are the problem, and we have to crush men. And that's basically the concept that these feminists have. You know, men are the problem. We need to get rid of men. You know, it's a victim culture. Everything that men do, they victimize women. Breathing victimizes women. You can't breathe unless I say. You know, and then, you know, basically we want to subjugate men. We want to put men in a position where we make more than men for doing jobs that aren't as I wouldn't say important, but in the job that you're doing for the company, the job that you have wouldn't net as much money as a man, but they give you as much money as a man just because you feel you deserve it when you don't, you know. In fact, in some cases, you're not working as hard as the man, you know. You're not spending as much time at work, yet you want to get special privileges so that you can be made to feel better, you know. And these concepts of women have this idea that they're so much more important in this world than men, you know. And this is why we have the MGTOW now, you know, the men going their own way, you know. They don't want to get married. They don't want to deal with this stuff, you know. The fact that you can be railroaded into having a child and having to pay child support for a child that's not yours for the rest of your life, or at least until the child's like 18 years old, is very real and very scary. A woman can completely destroy your life by doing this. You might be in college, and she might be in college, and she might not be able to graduate. You know, this is a common scenario. And she has a boyfriend in college, so she tells him she's on the pill. She gets pregnant, and now the man has to also drop out of college too, because he can't afford to continue going to college and also having a baby and a wife who's not in college either. You know, so then he has to go to work. Now he's had to stop his education and take care of a child that he didn't want in the first place. You know, and these are common stories. These aren't things that I'm just making up. This happens all the time.